in the area of sex, like in all of the 9 areas of activity, that the white supremacists can think of to cause absolute chaos in the minds of black people, they are going to push it to the hilt. And in the area of sex, since sex is a very powerful motivating force, the second greatest motivating force among the people of the planet, next to white supremacy itself, the white supremacists naturally are going to cause a chaotic mind in all non-white people. That's their goal in the area of sex to the maximum. You know, it's always been chaos. We've never had the type of relationships in the area of sex like in all other areas, economics, that we should have since the advent of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing close to it, and getting further and further away from it. But the white supremacists intend in 2018 to make sex, everything associated with sex, totally chaotic when it comes to the non-white people of this entire planet. I want to keep repeating that. The white supremacists intend to make everything totally chaotic, everything completely messed up, everything a total disaster when it comes to non-white people, black, brown, red, yellow, of this entire planet as fast as they can possibly do it, because they know that if they can mess up the minds, because it all starts with the mind, if they can mess up the minds, the bodies will follow, of the non-white people when it comes to sex, then it will be much easier to control them in all the other areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, because sex, you know, everybody walks around thinking about sex. People who are not involved in sexual activity, or at least thinking about it, because they have to think about it because other people are thinking about it. I mean, I've given illustrations on this, you know, that everybody's familiar with. The little old lady down the street, that's not to, you know, say anything derogatory about her, but, you know, she probably no longer has a husband or a boyfriend and all like that, but she's still interested in sex, all right? Even if it just means pulling back the curtain and seeing who's going with who, you know, who's visiting who in the block, and sitting down at the dinner table talking about it. She's still interested in it. She's talking about what other people are doing sexually, because she's no longer having sex, but she used to, a whole bunch of it maybe, or maybe none of it. But it's all had an effect on her mind.
Yes, sir.
It affects everybody. Sex affects everybody, even when they pretend that it doesn't. What do you see now? All of the people now, when they run out of things in politics to talk about, they go after people talking about their sexual activity, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
That's correct. I mean, all the politicians and whatnot. I just heard about somebody associated in the Northwestern Hemisphere yesterday. I think it's somebody associated with law enforcement, the FBI or something.
Yeah, that was Mueller.
Somebody is saying something about his sex life.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we can't say nothing else about him, so, hey, find out something sexual about him. Find out what he does sexually, what he has done sexually,
yes,
what he was thinking about doing sexually.
Yeah, that was,
and try to, you know, and all of the entertainers and whatnot. Yeah. It's all about sex. Mm-hmm. Songs are about sex. Most romantic songs are about what? About sex.
Yes.
You know, male with female. And then, so the white supremacists, though, to get back to the point, they intend to make everything chaotic, totally chaotic, when it comes to the non-white people of this entire planet, when it comes to the area of sex, the 8th area of activity. I mean, see it. You see it all around you. You hear it. Yeah, I mean, it's being ramped up 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
They are carrying it over the top. I mean, they're trying to think of everything they can possibly do.
It is World AIDS Day, and a new CDC report is highlighting the racial disparities in HIV in the United States. The report finds that in the past decade, new HIV infections have dropped among white, gay, and bisexual men, but remained flat among Black and Hispanic, Latin, gay, and bisexual men. And according to UNICEF, in 2020, a child was infected with HIV every 2 minutes around the world, and currently 2 in 5 children living with HIV worldwide don't even know their status. Let's talk more about this and bring in Associate Director of HIV and AIDS at UNICEF, Dr. Cheowe Luo, and also founder and CEO of the National Black Leadership Commission on Health, C. Virginia Fields. Thank you both for being with me here today. Virginia, let's start with you. The CDC report, as we mentioned, found that the use of PrEP, which is the pre-exposure prophylaxis that reduces the risk of HIV by 99% when taken daily, was used significantly less among people of color. How much of an impact does this have, and how accessible is this medication?
Well, first of all, it's very disheartening to hear and read those statistics, and we know that the pandemic has even created more challenges in terms of use of PrEP as well as getting tested. So PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, as you said, which is preventive, we have been able to encourage more African Americans, Black males especially, to take PrEP based on relationships, based on our work in the communities. We are trusted. We've been able to answer questions, and we've seen some progress. But all of that has basically been slowed down. HIV testing, use of PrEP, getting persons into treatment, as well as staying in treatment in the midst of this pandemic. So it is very alarming, and it speaks to the work that we still have to do.
And you bring up a good point, Virginia. Trust is such a huge part of what's going on. Dr. Luo, you know, this is heartbreaking that we know that one child dies every 5 minutes worldwide. That was the number in 2020, and that's from HIV, and that's according to UNICEF, of course. How has the prolonged pandemic, COVID-19, actually deepened the inequalities driving the HIV epidemic, and how has that affected the number of children that we're seeing that are losing their lives or being infected?
No, thank you. And this is an important question for us to reflect on. We've been working with countries as way back as 2000 to make sure that we put up the systems and the services that women living with HIV need for them to access antiretroviral treatment, to make sure that we keep them alive and well, but we also prevent them from passing on infection to their children. With the COVID pandemic, the impact that COVID has had on service delivery in a lot of countries in the developing world has also meant that women are not accessing those services. And what we saw earlier on in the pandemic, as we got the lockdowns, as we got staff deployed to respond to this emergency, as we communicated to people about the danger of this COVID-19, meant that people were not coming to the clinics the way they would normally do. And so what we saw is major declines in the testing rates of women to find out whether they were HIV infected. We also saw major declines in new initiations of treatment. But having said that, I'll actually say the focus that we've had as an HIV community on people-centered approaches also meant that we have established the necessary networks, especially at the community level, and the communities were able to very quickly mobilize themselves to think about solutions, for example, coming together. Instead of all of them going back to clinic for their medication, one person could go and bring it back to the community. We're able to link these communities with the people that were at the forefront of the COVID response to make sure that they were doing this work safely. So we've learned a lot during the COVID pandemic that the way we deliver services can be adapted to fit people according to their need.
Neely Fuller is constantly talking about how white supremacy affects all 9 areas of human activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Y'all ready to have this conversation? Or we still gonna act like the stuff we doing sexually don't affect us? Because we finna have this conversation tonight, so you better strap it up. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones, Breakdown Friday. Let's get into it. Neely Fuller, one of the main things he was talking about in that clip is one of the goals of white supremacy is to cause confusion, especially in the 8th area of human activity, which is sex. Cause confusion, cause chaos. Put those 2 clips together. Heard him talking about the goal is to cause confusion, causing chaos. Then I followed that up with a clip about showing how HIV/AIDS still to this day is affecting the Black community here in America, worldwide, because it's global system. But we're going to concentrate on what's going on here in America. And so before we get deep into the HIV, we need to reiterate, we talk about how we have sex. I believe, and this is from my 13 years of doing HIV/AIDS prevention and training and care, I believe we need to change the way we have sex. The way we are engaging in sexual activity clearly isn't productive. And it's time for us to stop hiding and stop running from these conversations, because you might not care for the population that's affected the most, not understanding that, hey, you keep acting like that and it's going to affect the person that you in the bed with. So,
Joe,
go ahead.
Explain what you mean by we need to change the way we have sex.
Well,
Can you go into a little bit more detail?
The way we engage into having sex, the act of sexual activity, the way we think about sex, the way we go about basically engaging in the act of sex isn't the safest way or the most productive way of having sex, especially if we're talking about in the realm of protecting ourselves from the transmission of HIV and other STDs or STIs, or even in the unplanned pregnancies. People are not paying attention, first of all, to all of the safe sex materials, and they're not using all of the safe sex materials or safe sex tools that are out there. But also, like, for example, when if I'm giving an HIV test to somebody, and especially if it's somebody who thinks that the person they may have had sex with, that person may have HIV. So the question I'm asking them is, first of all, okay, did you engage in oral sex? Did you engage in vaginal sex? Did you engage in anal sex? If you engaged in oral sex, did you use a condom? Did you use protection? Any type of protection engaged in oral sex, whether it's somebody performing on the male or female. Okay. If you did engage in oral sex, and was it the best experience? Did she rough you up? Did she scrape you up? That matters. The breaking of the skin, your skin being intact, that matters. Because if let's say a woman is HIV positive and she performs oral sex on the man and she kind of scrape him up, and then that man has unprotected vaginal sex with her and she has HIV and he's scraped up, that's created what's called ports of entry, and that increases his chances of contracting HIV. And so that's an example of what I mean by we need to change the way we have sex. We need to be more conscious of the way we're having sex, because for one, we're not protecting ourselves all the way that we're supposed to, and we don't even really think about the range of safe sex and how far that goes. Does that answer the question?
So we need to be having safe sex with proper barriers, proper amounts of lubrication, and proper testing beforehand.
Proper testing, yes. Need to be having conversations about the types of sexual activities that people engage into, whether they might be into something that you're not into. Whether you need to know this person's history of having STDs. You need to know what's this person's attitude about wearing protection, using protection. Because all of that matters in going to keeping yourself safe, especially if we're trying to reduce the numbers.
And I bring up the lubrication point because it's a sore point for everybody. But so we are, you are saying again with the breaking of the skin.
Right.
Obviously, if things are a little dry or whatever the case might be,
It
that
increases the
abrasiveness,
chances.
could create a port of entry, as you would say. Okay, I just wanted
Right.
to, because when you say that we need to change the way we have sex, that's broad, and I know,
Hmm.
like, I'm technical Ted. What that mean?
But that's why you're supposed to do what you do. I trust me, I got the answers on this. But all right, so I want to, but like I said, before we get deep into HIV, throw it to you, PC, because you a man and you work with young boys and you work with young kids. So how?
Not with having sex, no.
Yeah, no. You as an educator, you're a teacher. Okay, you
Thank you.
teach children about stuff in school, not nothing sexual. Okay, to be clear. So how do you, in your opinion, how do you think just black people, even in our age range, even the younger age range, how do you think they just sex period? How do you think black people perceive sex before we even get to the safe sex?
Very, very reckless. Um, and when we start talking about just the concept of sex, the thought process of sex, from a very primitive perspective. And I say that not to insult anybody, but I say it because when you think about an evolution, the evolution of a species, the more evolved the species is, the more sophisticated a species is, the less they are enamored with the physical, um, the seeking to the thrill of that sort of physical release. They find it in other ways, and I don't want to say another word, but it just escaped me right now. But in terms of how we move about it, it's not sophisticated at all. It's kind of like we treat sex with, we're very irresponsible in regards to having it. We treat it as if it's the number one priority.
Yeah.
And when you try to teach it to young people, they don't understand the responsibility that comes with it. And the older you get, the more, not just the older, but the more mature you get, the more worldly you get in terms of your not just accomplishments, but your thought processes, your evolution. The more you sort of respect the processes of everything you do. And when you talk about sex, and I brought this up on my Facebook page a few weeks ago and drew a few people crazy. Sex is a ritual that we undertake. When you embrace and you transfer fluids with people, and there is almost, for some people, there's a spiritual connection that takes place. Even the people who do it recklessly and do it haphazardly, you know. So even before you get to the part where the harm that comes from being irresponsible with sex, the potential consequences that come from being irresponsible, just the physical consequences from STIs to possibly to impregnating somebody, to traumatizing somebody. Because if you have rough enough sex, you can traumatize somebody. Um, to the point you're talking about, breaking, the all the other things. Before you get to that, some of us get to this place where this is a spiritual thing, and that's the evolution of a people. Like when scientists talk about the evolution, like million years from now, what will people evolve into? Many of them think we'll just evolve into a form of energy, right? Which is our natural essence and things of that nature. So it's a very deep topic with me, because when you try to explain it to people, you try to explain it to people in ways they'll understand. But I think that this is not an accident. We're in a highly sexualized environment, and the ways that they actually go after people is the advertising, the programming. I mean, the Nickelodeon channel, the Disney channel, all the children, Cartoon Network, all these channels that are geared towards children promote sex, commercials, the color red. They understand that when you show them flash the color red, it takes the brain into that suggestive frequency, into the point where the power of suggestion sexually, you can manipulate people into wanting and desiring something, because those people will equate those particular things with the feeling, the eroticism that they experience from having sex. So this is a very conniving thing that's taking place, and it's putting us, unfortunately, it's happened to us at a time, like I said, where the recklessness of sex is there, where people are wanting to express themselves sexually as though it's some sort of liberation. And you're seeing the results. I mean, you get to see the results literally on a daily basis.
We're gonna go over it. We're gonna go over it. So you mean tell me, so you brave enough to talk about the spiritual and the psychological, emotional effects of having sex under the system of white supremacy? That's what you brave enough to talk about that?
We don't have time not to. See, people are used to being pandered to. People are used to us talking around things. And how come we can talk about the spiritual nature of God, or the spiritual nature of the ancestors, the spiritual nature of the universe, and not include sex in it, when sex is at the time when people are actually at the probably the most heightened sense of spirituality? Is when people are having sex, literally, it's almost as though your soul leaves your body. What do people talk about oral sex and say, "I'm gonna snatch your soul"? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm a demon. They call it demon time when she going ham. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to not talk about those things, or to pretend like that's not the conversation, that speaks more so to our de-evolution. That speaks much more to our social and psychological regression.